It's trade season, baby. Post All-Star break, pre-trade deadline, one of the busiest and most hectic times of the year for baseball fans. And that is because, 90, 95, 99% of trades are all going to happen in that window. Tigers, we got a lot to discuss. Who's going to be on the move? Who are we likely holding on to? What are we looking for in return? All today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Friday, July 14th, 2023. Happy Friday, everybody. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Alrighty, well, the Detroit Tigers did not play a ball game on Thursday. It's still the All-Star break. You're listening to this on Friday, where they will begin a 3-game series in Seattle against the Mariners. We'll talk about that if we have time at the very end of the show. But most of this show is going to be starting to prepare for trade deadline season. And I know what you're thinking. Well, some of you are like, yay, finally. But others are probably like, yeah, it might be a little early still. We do not have a single day off from now until the actual trade deadline on July 31st, unless it's still August 1st now, because I know they moved it back a day at one point. Regardless, we only have one off day from now until the deadline. So it's going to come very, very, very quickly. The Tigers play 17 games from now until the trade deadline. And what is that, 2.5 weeks worth of games? And there's a lot of questions that are going to be answered. So I just wanted to kind of start the conversation, get the ball rolling, give people kind of an idea of what I'm looking for and what to somewhat expect, I guess. Not that I have a crystal ball or anything, but that what to expect going forward throughout these next 2.5 weeks on the trade front, because this roster is going to change a lot from now until August 1st, August 2nd, a lot. Okay, in the last 2 months of the season, there's probably going to be a few changes too, just internally. Obviously, no trades happening. So within that, I kind of just want to start the conversation about what to expect. And I think for me, it's very just cut and dry. This team is going to sell. And I know that that's frustrating for some people to hear. The forever optimists, right, of the group. I appreciate you all greatly. And I will never tell another human being how to be a fan. Okay, so you do you pick up the optimism where I lack it. But for me, this team's selling just point blank. It's not even really too much of a discussion for me. I think it's pretty straightforward. They're certainly not buying, so we can kick that just completely out of the conversation. They're not. They could. I'm not kidding. They could literally go 17-0. From now until the trade deadline, and they still would not be buyers. They're not doing it. This front office does not believe that the farm system and this organization, just top to bottom, has enough assets to have sustained good success going forward. And 2 hot weeks in July, I don't think is changing that opinion. So they're not buying. They're not going to get rid of prospects for current talent. Okay, they're 11 games under 500 at the All-Star break. We have to remember that. And that's the other thing when it comes to the perspective of this. The reason why I'm so headstrong about them being sellers is partially, again, for what I think this front office, how I think this front office views this team right now. I don't think this front office or coaching staff, really, AJ Hinch involved in that conversation too, I don't think they give a flying, flapping about being 5.5 games back. I think they care about being 11 games under 500, right? If you were to split those two entities in half and separate them, on one hand, you're 5.5 back. On the other hand, you're 11 under 500. If you were to separate those ideologies and those two trains of thought completely, when entering a deadline, no team 11 games under 500 is buying. But plenty of teams, 5.5 games out, buy. I think this front office is just strong ahead. You know what? This is a historically bad division. We don't think we're going to be competitive, and we're going to sell at the deadline because that's what teams that are 11 games under 500 do. That's where I'm at. That's the read that I get on this front office. The only thing that can even somewhat throw a wrench in this is if this team goes out there and does go on an absolute heater from now until the trade deadline. They're not going to go 17-0, obviously, but the thing is, like, it would have to be close. Like, it would have to be such a heater. Like, and the reason I say that is because, again, at 11 games under, they could win. I don't know. They could go 7 games over 500 from now until the deadline. They would still be at the trade deadline 4 games under 500. Most teams that are 4 games under 500 at the deadline sell, right? Even if they're 10 games over 500, let's say I guess it's an odd number. You can't really do 10, but like, let's say they go 13-3 over their next 16 games. That is still a sub 500 ball club. Like, do you understand how far removed we are currently from even being a 500 team? Now, again, 500 is first place in this awful division. But they would have to go on a serious heater. Like a serious heater. And assume that everyone ahead of them remains at their current pace. Because all of their Locked On shows are talking about the likelihood of them going on heaters too. Okay, so do you get what I'm coming? Like, it would take such a miracle run for them to even get there. And even if all of that did happen, even if the stars align and all of that happens, right? I still think they just go from hardcore sell to softcore sell and stand pat a little bit more, maybe. Like, maybe that's the difference between selling E-Rod and extending E-Rod. Maybe. But, like, even then, I don't really think so. Like, personally, I am just, like, very much 100% of the belief that this team is just going to be selling. And I don't think there's too much they can do to prevent that, personally. But only time will tell. Nobody has a crystal ball. That's what makes it fun, okay? So let's get into the players. Let's start talking about individual players that we could see moved, who's going to be targeted from other organizations at the All-Star break that are currently on the Detroit Tigers. We'll do that right after I tell y'all about our friends over at eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits just right the first time around. Just add your ride to the My Garage and look for the green check to know a part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. I appreciate y'all for tuning in very, very greatly, as always. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day and make us your first listen every day. We'll be back on Monday recapping the Seattle Mariners series. And also, just going forward, any rumors about the trade front will be addressed over the night. Like, this is going to be a really, really hectic couple of weeks, okay? We're going to have games being played. We're going to have like the second half for the minor league season too. That's like a pretty common point where like call-ups happen. I would imagine the Tigers are going to be very much more in the call-up prospects game after the trade deadline. So we're going to keep very tight tabs on all of that. All right. This is very far from the last time we talk about trade rumors from now until the deadline. So let's discuss some individual players. Okay. Who is on the move on this team? There's a couple of slam dunks, and then there's a couple of conversations. All right. I think as far as the slam dunks go, for me, Michael Lorenzen is probably the biggest slam dunk in this entire organization to get moved to the deadline. I had somebody asked, like, does him being an all-star like raise his trade value? No, it does not. I love the line of thought though. Like, hey, we're gonna trade this dude anyway. Maybe we can get a little bit more out of it. I love the train of thought. But no, like these organizations are incredibly smart and have more information than anything. They're not letting a fan-based award, which every team has to have a representative, whether you deserve it or not, determine like player value. Like, no, it's not going to change his trade value even one tiny bit. But that being said, he's absolutely gone after the deadline. It's a 1-year deal. He was always going to be in this conversation. We've been talking about, that's the other thing, like when it comes to my mindset towards selling this year, we've been on this wave since like February, as I'm sure most people have. Like we did a whole episode during spring training about like who was going to make it to the end of the season and who wasn't. So I think it's really safe to say that Lorenzen goes. I don't expect like a huge return. At the end of the day, it's half a season of a 4 ERA like innings eater starter. But he has been pretty effective and has gone on some stretches this year when he's been really good. 5-6 start stretches where he's been. Honestly, borderline dominant at one point. There is his third through his seventh start, I want to say, of the season. I don't know why that's how my brain works. In May, he was really good. So, yeah, I'd imagine there will be a market for him. He will be traded, but I'm not expecting like a boatload of top 100 prospects in return. Like this is going to be a couple of prospects, probably a B level and a C level. Maybe one of them super young. It's just a swing on like an 18 or 19-year-old. But we'll see. We'll see. I'm also very interested in Scott Harris's trade strategy because we've seen 2 trades from him, and they both took very different ideologies. One was just give us the best single prospect you possibly can. And we like Justin Henry Malloy for Joe Jimenez, right? Just to give us the best single prospect you got. And then the other one, the Gregory Soto one, was let's kind of take flyers on multiple guys and hope that 1 or 2 of them pan out. And so I'm interested in seeing what that kind of leads to. At the end of the day, they'll just go for highest ceiling possible in the organization. But I think, yeah, I'm confident Michael Lorenzen will get a okay return, but it's certainly not going to be some like uber fantastic, oh my goodness, this is what a fleece type of deal. The other one that I don't see too many people talking about, at least publicly, that I'm very confident is going to happen is Jose Cisnero is 100% not going to be on this baseball team on August 1st. And if there's no trade market for him, then it's like he's going to get traded. Like there's no way. Like there's no way. And he's a 34-year-old who had a really good June and has honestly had a really bad April and has just slowly gotten better as the season has gone along. And then again, like just had a really, really good, like genuinely good June. No team is trading Cisnero thinking that they're going to get like a back-end playoff reliever. So I want to make that abundantly clear. But I also think that there is always a market for solid relievers for teams making a playoff push. The bullpen is so vital to postseason success. They want bullpen depth, and Cisnero can give you a solid 6th or 7th inning guy for a competitive team. So I think that he is definitely gone. And again, 34 years old, but on top of that, 5 years of control down. So like he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year anyway, another rental. I'm hearing like a noise like in my walls, and I'm maybe an animal's in there. I don't really know what's happening. Okay. So those 2, I think, are probably the 2 biggest slam dunks, like guarantees I can give you. Now, after that, we transition into a few more of the slightly more difficult conversations, but still very likely. Eduardo Rodriguez, the big one. This is your biggest trade piece. This is your biggest trade piece. And teams that are 11 games under 500 at the All-Star break trade and maximize value for their biggest trade pieces, which is why Erod is gone. he's basically a makeshift rental, right? His contract technically has a few more years on it, but he has an opt out this winter, and he's definitely taking it because it's kind of a bargain based on how he's pitched this season. So, and budgets are going up and whatnot. He's absolutely opting out, 100%. So I think that he is very much gone. He will give you the most of the three names we've mentioned so far, pretty comfortably. He should, and I'm excited. I want to preface this. I am genuinely excited about the return we are going to get for Erod. Okay, I don't want this to get misconstrued. That being said, if you're like holding your breath thinking that just because he's our biggest trade piece that automatically means we're going to get like some crazy like fat return, you are mistaken. He's not going to give you like some like, oh my goodness, this is one of the best players on the entire trade market. We're going to get multiple top 100 prospects back. I'm not even sure an opposing team is really going to give you anyone in their system's top 3 prospects. It's a rental, and on a really good team, he's a number 2 at absolute best, probably closer to a number 3 on like a legitimate World Series contender. And that's no disrespect. That's needed. He's a lefty. When he's on, he can go on crazy hot stretches. We've seen it. I don't think the injury plays a factor in his value. Thankfully, the reason I think that is because it's like a freak finger injury. It's not like freak finger injury. Say that a few times fast. But so it's not like an arm or an elbow thing or something that teams are really going to be worried about. Like how many innings are left on his arm? Like his arm is fine. It was just a weird finger thing that's not going to happen again. So I don't think the injury will kill his value. I do think that it's important for him to pitch well from now until the deadline, obviously. Every start is going to be meaningful. The first one you can just chalk up to first start back. But, I mean, if he's given up 4 or 5 runs every single outing, obviously that's going to kill his value. You know what I mean? So the injury in a vacuum doesn't hurt, but his performance, obviously, right? I don't need to convince anybody of that. His performance is going to determine a lot. So I think he's as good as gone. I would trade him at the deadline. The only thing, again, like if they win, I guess there's a reality in which they just extend him instead, but I don't subscribe to that. I think he's getting traded. I'm pretty confident in it as well. Okay, who else? Some under the radar name I haven't seen literally anyone say that I don't think it's a guarantee, but it wouldn't shock me either, is Chasen Shreve. Not that he's been dominant and not that he's going to get you a haul, but like with these kind of players that are just like year to year, like a different team every year kind of thing. I don't know, like Chasen Shreve's a lefty that's been halfway decent from the 1st of May, right? Not the best reliever in the world, not going to be a high leverage guy for any team, but as kind of a lefty specialist type of player, it really wouldn't shock me if he was moved for like a flyer on like a C-level prospect or something, nothing crazy. Okay, what else? I mean, there's a few else. So the other theme you're noticing is that a lot of these guys all of these guys actually are pitchers. I don't think the Tigers really have any bats that are going to be tradable. And that, A, is just an alarming sign that your offense is not very good. But B, I mean, it's just there. I don't know. Like, there's just not. I mean, we can go through them really quick. We can just do like quick hitting, just lightning round kind of thing. Miggy, obviously, no. Matt Vierling, no, not getting traded, not going anywhere. Riley Green, certainly not. Kerry Carpenter, certainly not. Akil Baddoo, if I had to pick anyone we've listed so far, I guess I'd consider him kind of like an under the radar candidate, but he's also a Scott Harris type of hitter. He walks a boatload. I think he kind of fits that bill. He still has plenty of years of control left. He's shown flashes of being really good. I think Baddoo's staying. I certainly don't think he's getting traded. But of the names I've listed so far, he's certainly the most likely because none of the other dudes are getting traded. So I don't know, like maybe they pair him with a reliever and try to get more, but like I don't think so. I think they're going to see what they have and kind of see Baddoo through, given that he fits the offensive profile that the front office is looking for. Torkelson, we can stop the trolling. Like no, Zach Short, no, doesn't really have any trade value. Andy Ibanez, I mean, I guess possibly some team out there wants a sub 700 OPS utility player at 30 years old, like maybe, but like I don't really think he has any trade value that's gonna warrant the Tigers to like really shop him. And Javi Baez, you can say whatever you want. It's not happening. The only other, I guess, like Zach McKinstry, like maybe, but like again, like that's a guy that had a really good May and has been struggling since. And before the season started, was in AAA. And like I don't know, I don't think Zach McKinstry has trade value either. Like that, there's your offense. Well, catchers, Jake Rogers not going anywhere. Eric Haas, I saw a few people toss his name around. I don't. What trade value does Eric Haas have? Who's gonna want to bring in Eric Haas with the way he's been playing this season? A below average defensive catcher that's been one of the worst qualified hitters in the game of baseball this season. I don't think that really garners too much trade value. So I don't know. I think it's more likely Haas gets DFA'd than is traded after the trade deadline. But I'm sure they'll try and shop him and see if they can get anything for him. But I would not be surprised if there was not a taker. I think teams would probably just look and go, if we really think we can get something in him, we'll just claim him on waivers when you DFA him, dog. I'm not going to waste an asset to go bring this guy in right now. So, yeah, it's really pitchers. And that leaves us with one final conversation, which is the back end of the bullpen, and if those guys are worth trading, because that seems to be the big debate between the fan base. We'll do that right after I tell y'all about our friends over at Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs are the best. They make you look good and they feel good. They are my favorite pair of shorts. They're slim fitting. They look like khakis. They fit through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look while being unbelievably comfortable. These are, like, for pretty much any situation, these are my go-to at this point. Like, I look forward to doing laundry just so that I can get my Bird Dogs back in my like wardrobe rotation sooner. I wear them to the lake because I've worn them swimming before because like they work as, like getting wet. Like it's not an issue. I wear them to the lake all the time. I wear them to like grad parties or outdoor, like relatively formal events. Like they work right there. They look fantastic. They are by far my favorite pair of golf shorts. Like truly, they are my favorite article of clothing in my entire wardrobe. They are the best. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB or enter promo code LockedOnMLB for a free Yeti style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB or promo code LockedOnMLB for a free Yeti style tumbler. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. Also got to tell you all about our friends over at Margs. Margs are the best. This episode is brought to you by Margs Sparkling Margaritas. You guys know I love a good drink, and when I've been trying to find a replacement to like the typical White Claws and High Noons of the world, thank goodness I stumbled upon Margs. The refreshing, ready-to-drink sparkling margaritas have officially become my go-to cocktail. They're crafted with real Blanco tequila. They're clean, crisp, and they genuinely taste so good. They've got 5 unique flavors, so there's something for everyone to enjoy. I love these the most when kicking back after work, watching a game, or just hanging with friends. This summer, I've continued to pack my cooler with Margs for backyard barbecues, boat trips, days at the beach. They are the drink of summer, no question, and they're also going to be a perfect tailgate season drink this fall. So visit sipmargs.com to find a retailer near you. That's SIPMARGS.com to find a retailer near you. Must be 21 or older to enjoy. Cheers, and please drink responsibly. Alrighty, back for our third and final segment here of Locked On Tigers. I appreciate y'all for tuning in, as always. So when talking about the trade deadline and who's going to get moved, there's really only one conversation left, and that is, are we going to trade Alex Lane or Jason Foley? So this is the toughie. This is by far the most difficult conversation to have here. I lean no to both. And let me explain why. It's tough. So I lean no to both. We'll start with Foley because I feel like that's easier. I lean no on Foley. I think that he is sustainable. The way that he pitches is sustainable. But there is, with both of these guys, we can clump them in together for a second. There is a reason that there is not some long decorated history of trades to look at in which relievers have 4+ years of control left. There's a reason that doesn't happen very often. And it's because relievers change so quickly. Like there's time and time again in the history of baseball, we've seen relievers that are really, really good, and the next season they struggle mightily, and then maybe they're good again. They're similar to goalies if you're a hockey fan. Like they're just kind of all over the place. And when you find a good, consistent one, you lock them down because that's rare, right? That's what makes closers. And so when talking about both of these guys who have 4.5 years of control left, I believe, 5 going into the season. So I believe they're both at 4.5 left. It's difficult because there's not really anything to compare the market to. And the other thing is, the point that I just made is not lost to front offices. Like I haven't just given you some revolutionary, like don't tell anyone, let's try and trick all the front offices secret. Again, there's a reason these types of trades don't happen. And it's because of that. And so I find it really hard to believe that. How do I word this? So when talking about the market of these two players, obviously they both have a market. Alex Lang has a market. He has some of the nastiest stuff in any bullpen in all of baseball. Some team would love to get their hands on him and see if they can make him more of a strike thrower than we've been able to so far in his major league career. And I don't think the Tigers have given up on Alex Lang either. He can absolutely still become that here too. But any team would love to have a young, controllable reliever with stuff as nasty as Alex Lang's. Jason Foley, his is more repeatable. He doesn't rely on swings and misses. He relies on ground balls, and he throws a bowling ball sinker that's always going to get ground balls. And he doesn't walk anybody either. He pounds the strike zone. That's higher floor, right? Lang probably higher ceiling, Foley higher floor. So when obviously any team would love either of these dudes. I say it all the time, right? Any team in baseball would do unthinkable things to have an automatic ground ball out of their bullpen to get a guy like Jason Foley. But because of the years of control and because of how niche and uncharted that market is, I'm not sure that you are going to be happy with the return we would get out of either of those two gentlemen, right? I think that there's, if they were to trade them, you'd look and go, why did we just give up 4.5 years of Lang for this return? I would have rather have just kept him. Now, that all being said, if someone does just give you a king's ransom for 1-inning relievers, then like that's going to be discussed and they're going to heavily consider taking it. Gregory Soto had multiple years left of control when we traded him as well, right? So like clearly Scott Harris is not afraid to do it if the price is right. So I really want to drive home. I don't think this is impossible. I just think from where I stand, that's such a, like I said, like an uncharted territory of a market that I don't have faith that any team is going to give you an offer that outweighs just having 2 really good relievers for the next 4 years. I hope that makes sense. So I'm leaning no. I'm leaning more no on Foley than Lang. Lang, I think it's so tough. And like some people are like, oh, you should have traded him in May. Let me promise you something. Again, I'll reiterate a point. Front offices are really smart. Maybe not the Rockies, but like most front offices are really, you're not going to pull one over on a Major League Baseball front office and be like, haha, they totally didn't know that all of 2022 he couldn't find the strike zone, and they each only looked at 1 month in his entire professional career, and we tricked them like that. And people love to play that game, but that like front offices are too smart for that. You weren't going to pull that off. Trades happen at the trade deadline for a reason. So same with Erod and like the injury. So I lean no on both and what I think is going to happen. Would I? I would not trade Jason Foley, and I would take calls, I guess, on Lang, but I would not be pressed to trade either of them. If someone doesn't give you the value you want, guess what? You just have 2 really good relievers for at least another calendar year. And then you can reassess next trade deadline, and you're still having 3.5 years, right, of team control on good relievers. assuming they stay productive. So I don't think that either of them are going to be traded, but it is certainly possible if someone just goes, you know what, screw history. We're going to pay a lot to get a guy like this on our team for the foreseeable future. But that's what it would take. And then the Tigers, because again, they're not just going to give them away for nothing. There's no point in that. They're not rentals. And the Tigers don't really have any bats to trade. The only one that we didn't talk about that I think has a possibility of getting traded is Will Vest. Somebody we talked about earlier in the season had a possibility of that too. Love Will Vest. I think that he is going to be the alternative for a team having to overpay for Lang or Foley. I think teams are going to be shopping and go, oh, like what would it take? And Scott Harris is going to get some crazy high price tag for either of those two guys. And then it's going to turn into, okay, well, what's the price on Vest and Cisnero? And I think Vest gives you more than Cisnero, obviously, but I think that that's probably more in line of what's going to happen. But I think there's a very good chance Will Vest is traded if he's healthy. If he's not healthy by the deadline, then he's here. But if he can get healthy, I guess I don't really know his timetable. As far as general targets, it's really quick conversation. That's why I saved it for the end. Young bats, done. Right? Like this offense still has a long way to go. A long way to go before they're even a major league average offense. Nonetheless, a good one. So it's going to be young, controllable bats. Does that mean 25-year-olds, right? Like we saw with the Soto trade that still have 5 or 6 years of control? Or does that mean prospects? I think it depends on the player. But it's going to be young, controllable bats. That's going to be the goal of the trade deadline. As far as alternatives, that was just like something in my head, is there an alternative to getting rid of any of these guys? The guys with control, the alternative is just hold on to them and have them on your team next year. So like that one's not too complicated. So outside of that, like, will they extend Jose Cisnero? No, like he's going to get traded. He's 34. Are they going to extend Michael Lorenzen? I don't think so. 4 ERA, middle rotation on a good team, even back end on like a really good team. 4 ERA. He'll be 32 next year. I don't think they're in the business of really extending him. The only conversation this even applies to is the conversation. The only player this conversation applies to is Eduardo Rodriguez. And I don't think that's happening either. I wouldn't be upset. I wouldn't be like screaming, red in the face mad. I wouldn't be pissed off if they extended Erod. But I don't think it's happening. Again, that's your biggest trade chip right now, your most valuable rental. You got to move your most valuable rental if you're a selling team. You have to. So I think he's gone. Seattle Mariners this weekend. The pitching matchups for that are... What are they? I think we're facing Kirby. I know. Erod and Castillo on Friday. Erod and Castillo Friday. Lorenzen and George Kirby Saturday. And Olsen and a TBD for Sunday against the Mariners. This is in Seattle. A team that is definitely going to be buying at the deadline in the Seattle Mariners. I do not think that this is a future trade partner because the Mariners have one of the best pitching rotations in baseball. It is nasty. It's so, like, people don't talk about how good it is, and it's mind-boggling to me. They're so young, they're under control, and they are disgusting. So I think that they're going to be in the market for bats, and we don't have any bats available on the market, really, as we just went over. So I don't think this is going to be like, an audition for, like, anyone, but something to keep an eye on. They'll definitely be buying. There's a lot of teams in fascinating situations, but that's where I stand. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. We'll be back on Monday recapping the series against the Mariners. And then again, throughout the next 2.5 weeks, we're going to be keeping up with them rumors because there's going to be a lot of them. They're going to be flying. All right. That's all I got. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. And I'll catch you on Monday, baby. Go, let me find the video. Oh, I can't find it. Go Tigers.